Girls meeting this year, albeit virtually. I'm hoping the next meeting will be a physical one. So I'll give you a brief background on OSI Global Insurance and Reinsurance Leaders Forum, especially for the benefit of members who are joining us for the first time. So this forum was launched at the 42nd OSI Annual Conference held in Kigali, Rwanda in 2019. And it was launched to highlight and increase the profile of women leaders in the reinsurance and insurance space, with a mission to mentor and grow leaders among female managers and executives in the insurance sector. This initiative also aims to provide a trusted and supportive environment for meaningful interactions among the most senior female insurance and reinsurance professionals, where women executives can network, share ideas, and also encourage each other to be the best resources within their companies. I would like to recognize, and in no particular order, past and continuing supporters of this initiative who have signed up for today's forum and have also managed to join us. We have Hajat Sebiala Afwer. Please forgive me if I do the pronunciations wrongly. She's the Director, Energizing Solutions Uganda, and the first woman named to AIO Hall of Fame. And she was also our guest of honor this April during the Girls event. I think I saw her. We also have Jacinda Njike, PwC, Head of Governance, Regulatory and Compliance, Cameroon. She was one of our speakers in the April session. We have this morning, we've been joined by Alice Shumba, Executive Director, FBC Reinsurance, and also a member of OSI board. She's joining us from Zimbabwe. We have Vinita Lotlika, Executive Director, Afro-Asian Insurance Services Limited, Uganda. I saw them. I think I saw Alice, and I've also seen Vinita joining us. And last but not least, we have Caroline Munene, Group CEO, AR Kenya. I hope I've not forgotten any other lady. So at this point, allow me to introduce our speaker for the day, Ms. Mucha Mlingo. So Mucha Mlingo is a self-professed emotional intelligence fanatic. She's on a mission to transform Africa, and she believes that individuals, communities, and organizations can leverage the scientifically based skill of emotional intelligence to increase effectiveness, improve well-being, strengthen relationships, and also improve the quality of life. She's passionate about empowering people to take ownership and create the future they want, and is the founder and lead change maker at PTS Africa, a boutique consultancy firm dedicated to the development of people. PTS Africa uses its expertise in EQ as a foundation to assist organizations to successfully navigate change, reboot culture, and drive sustainable performance. Mucha has a background in financial services with over 10 years financial advisory and client service experience in the UK. She has a master's in finance and investment from Cornell University and is currently working to complete a postgraduate diploma in organizational psychology from the University of London. Mucha was the 2018-2019 chair of the Nairobi chapter of OWIT, meaning that stands for the Organization of Women in International Trade. And under her leadership, the chapter hosted the annual OWIT Women in Trade Finance for the first time on African soil. She currently serves as a board advisor and remains as an active member. Mucha is also the chair of the Gender Sector Board at Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, which is a private sector apex and umbrella body that brings together the business community in a single voice to engage and influence public policy for an enabling business environment. Mucha believes that empowering women in business and international trade is the key to empowering women across Africa economically and create inclusive growth in the in their communities. She's also a member of Women on Boards Network. So Mucha is trusted by a number of companies, and I believe from this day, OSI is now going to join that very long list. So I'll just mention a few, like Kenya Revenue Authority, Standard Chartered, ABSA, IBM, Cisco, UN, Africa Union, Liberty Life. The list is long. I'll stop at this point, and Mucha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that great welcome. It's always interesting to hear when someone reads your bio. It's like they're describing someone else. So thank you very much, Rose, for the invitation to be here this morning. I know I am amongst a very distinguished crowd. So ladies, I'm really happy to be here to facilitate this conversation that we're going to have today about emotional intelligence and how you can leverage the power of emotional intelligence to lead. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and allow me to say that this will be a conversation. It will not be a lecture. I'm hoping that even though we are not in person, we are not together. And Rose, just a note, I hope that once you do have a physical meeting, you will invite me again. But for today, I know we are not together in person, but I trust that we will be able to engage one with another and have a rich conversation that will be of benefit to you in your leadership journey. When we consider what we have gone through as a result of COVID, I know that many will testify how the organizations that you run have been impacted in significant ways. The way that you lead has adapted or has changed in response to what is required in this season. And I think we can say that the real test of leadership doesn't really occur when everything is smooth sailing. Rather, leadership is oftentimes tested during a crisis. And what a crisis it has been. We have been buffeted to and fro. I know that we have representatives from all over the continent and in very different countries. In the different countries, the impact has been the same. And it has had a significant impact on business. And more importantly, a significant impact on how we lead. The way a leader behaves and acts during a crisis like this really establishes their credentials as a good leader or a poor one. I'm sure you've seen the messages that have gone around on social media looking at the countries that have navigated this pandemic and pointing out the fact that very many of those that have done it well have been led by women. I really am delighted to host this webinar. As you've heard, my name is Mucha Mlingo. I am an emotional intelligence coach. I'm the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa, as you have heard. We are an emotional intelligence company. We work with organizations, with teams, with individuals to help them understand the power of emotional intelligence so that they can really drive sustainable performance in their organizations and reboot culture in the organizations and drive engagement. We believe that emotional intelligence is a game-changing tool, a game-changing skill, and we utilize it in all our consulting, in all our leadership programs as a key component of driving positive change. As an organization, we're part of a global EQ network called 6 Seconds. 6 Seconds is a nonprofit network practicing and sharing the learnable, measurable skill of emotional intelligence. Founded in 1997, 6 Seconds is the first and largest organization that is 100% dedicated to the development of emotional intelligence. And as 6 Seconds preferred partners, we are part of a global mission to have 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. Our area of expertise, or the area in which we practice, is on this African continent. And like I said, I'm really delighted to facilitate our session today. As we consider the pandemic and the impact that it has had and how it has caused you to make shifts and adapt your leadership capabilities so that you can best support your team, today we are going to explore 3 key talking points. We're going to talk a little about why emotional intelligence, and then we're going to talk about how you can utilize emotional intelligence to drive performance. And lastly, I will share some tips that you can utilize as a leader. I will once finished with this presentation, share my slides with Rose and the team, and they will be forwarded to you. In addition, I will share the tips that I'm going to talk about today as a document that you can refer to help you continue to put emotional intelligence into practice. So that's what we are going to be doing today. And as I mentioned, the goal is that we are going to have a conversation. We are going to interact with each other. I will leave time at the end so that we can have questions. So if you do have questions at the end, I'll be more than happy to take them. But at the same time, you don't need to wait till the end. As we engage throughout, if you have a burning question, feel very free to share your thoughts with me. I'd like us to start by really reflecting on the last 1.5 years as we have navigated this pandemic. As you can see on my screen, I want to ask a question. Do any of these emotions describe how you have felt through this pandemic? Do any of these describe the emotions that you have felt throughout the pandemic? And if the answer is yes, please just go to the chat and type in yes for me. If the answer is no, that's an answer as well. Please do type no in the chat. So any of these, I can see lots of yeses coming through. Thank you very much. I can see lots of yeses coming through. All right, yes. I think the general consensus is that throughout this last 1.5 years or so of the pandemic, we have all felt moments of complete and total overwhelm. We have felt moments of fear, uncertain about what the future holds. We have felt moments of anger. Anger because we are forced into a situation that really is beyond our control. We have been forced to redo the way we do things, to rethink the way we think things. We have been forced to deal with loss. Terrible, terrible loss. And this has caused us to feel angry. We have felt irritable and we have felt withdrawn. I would describe myself as an extrovert. I would describe myself as an extrovert, and those who know me would probably agree that I am an extrovert. But I always say that I feel as though the pandemic has actually caused me to become a little introverted, to become a little withdrawn and into myself as a result of all the different emotions that we have felt. And so I can see that you are in agreement with me that we have felt a range of emotions that have made us feel very uncomfortable. I'd like to ask you another question. As you felt those emotions, whether it was being completely overwhelmed, feeling that anger, feeling withdrawn, irritable, or fearful, what did you do with that emotion? So what did you do with that feeling that you felt? Again, type in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you're also welcome to do that. If you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free to do so. What did you do with that emotion? As you felt what you felt, what did you do with that emotion? How did you handle how you were feeling? I'd love to hear from you. You can type in the chat. You can unmute yourself. Caroline says exercise. So exercise was a great way to dispel or deal with how we've been feeling. Penina says, tried working out and talking with my spouse. Maureen says, bottled it up, cried, and bought ice cream. Thank you very much for sharing. Rose cried, hooked up with friends. Veronica, comfort eating. S. Makuyana, vent to my partner and at times pray. Reham says, reading. Alice, walking it out. Hemlata, dance, talk with my loved ones, trying to cook new recipes. Joyce says, sleeping more. Jay Jangira cried, was very emotional. Rebecca says, pray. Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else? Mponda says, sleeping. Kayula, comfort food. Zenala wrote down a lot of things, prayed, started exercises. Mercy, connected more with family. Sasha says, eat, eat, eat. Sasha, I think there are very many of us that did the same. And Rachel says, pray, pray, pray. Equally, I think there are very many of us that did the same. Thank you so much for sharing, and you can continue to do so. Rachel, I've also learned to exercise. You can continue to share as we continue the conversation. And so our emotions impacted us in very many ways and caused us to behave in very many different ways as we struggled to navigate what we were feeling. As you contemplate how you have felt over the last year and a half, as a leader, I want you to just take a moment to reflect on how your teams have felt. Emotions get a very bad rap, more especially for women in leadership, because we have repeatedly been told that women are too emotional. We have a tendency to want to disregard our emotions, to seek to be more rational for fear of being labeled as emotional. And yet emotions are data. They are an integral part of who we are, and they work automatically and impact our body and mind. Thoughts, feelings, and actions are very tightly intertwined, and it's really difficult, almost impossible, to separate them from each other. If you think about emotions as your car's dashboard, when your emotional check engine light comes on, you're receiving a signal. And that signal is a tool that you can utilize, a tool that you should utilize. As a woman in leadership, the goal is to then leverage that emotional insight as a strategic resource, rather than ignoring it, rather than suppressing it, rather than trying to push it away or cover it up with all the different things that we do to ignore our emotions. You wouldn't ignore the fuel lights in your car. So why ignore your emotions? As a rule of thumb, emotions are meant to be analyzed, to be looked at with curiosity and not judgment. Trying to understand the source of this emotion, even for those emotions that make you feel uncomfortable. There is no good or bad emotion. Emotions are data. Emotions are insight, a message from yourself to yourself, letting you know the state of play. And so emotional intelligence then is the tool which we utilize to really dig deep to understand what that insight is, and then use that information appropriately. As leaders, it has become more and more important to be in tune with your emotions, to understand the message that your emotions are giving you. It really is impossible, and we're going to continue exploring this idea, to leave emotions at the door, as we have so often heard. Rather, the idea is to become emotionally intelligent, to learn to be aware of your emotions and override your default response to that emotional stimuli and choose different. What is emotional intelligence, you may ask? Emotional intelligence is really just being able to become more aware of what you're feeling, more intentional, about what you do with that insight, and more purposeful, ensuring that the choices you make are aligned with your overall purpose and goals. And in leadership, EQ eats IQ for breakfast. In leadership, emotional intelligence really is a crucial skill. At the leadership level, intelligence and competence are a given. You are where you are because of your intelligence and your competence. But in a rapidly changing environment, emotional intelligence will enable you to collaborate more effectively, to be more empathetic with your teams, to communicate to produce the desired results, and to become more effective at influence, ensuring that you have more win-win situations at work. Emotional intelligence is the main determinant of leadership success. What is emotional intelligence? As I said, being more aware of your emotions, being more intentional about how you utilize that emotional insight, how you show up in the choices that you make, and being more purposeful, aligning your day-to-day choices with your overall purpose, your overall goal, being clear about your why, and bringing others along. If we look at data, there is much data out there about why emotional intelligence is important. But allow me to just focus on 3 research projects or 3 studies that really look at how emotional intelligence impacts leadership effectiveness. At PepsiCo, they ran a pilot selecting leaders based on certain EQ competencies. And what they found was that these leaders who were selected on the basis of these EQ competencies, so when they were recruited or when they were promoted, it was on the basis of these competencies. These leaders generated 10% more productivity in their teams, 87% less turnover, and a $3.75 million economic value. At Amadori, one of the largest suppliers for McDonald's in France, 76% of the variation in employee engagement was predicted by the manager's EQ scores, 76%. And the level of employee engagement was directly correlated with plant performance. And so leaders who were higher in emotional intelligence had greater employee engagement, and this resulted in higher plant performance. The last is a study outlined in the Leadership and Organizational Development Journal in 2009, which showcased that leaders who scored higher in key aspects of emotional intelligence, including empathy and self-awareness, were more likely to be profitable. And so emotional intelligence then impacts the bottom line. Leaders who are high in emotional intelligence are more successful, generate better results, drive greater employee engagement and motivation, and ultimately impact the bottom line. And so emotional intelligence is not just a nice to have skill. It is an essential skill for leaders who would like to thrive, more particularly as we navigate these challenging times that we find ourselves in. And so emotional intelligence is a crucial skill. And what excites me about emotional intelligence, the reason why I have declared myself an emotional intelligence fanatic, is that this skill, this change-making skill, is learnable. It is a skill that anyone, young or old, regardless of how many years of leadership experience you have, it is a skill that is learnable. The fact of the matter is that the dog can be taught new tricks. Emotional intelligence is a learnable skill. It takes effort, it takes application, but it is a learnable skill. And it is a learnable skill that will reap rewards. Another thing that excites me about emotional intelligence is that it will reap rewards for you as a leader, but it also reaps rewards for you in your life, in the relationships you have with your loved ones, your spouse, your partner, your children, your siblings, your community. Individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective when it comes to work, but they're also better at doing relationships. Individuals who are high in emotional intelligence, excuse me, based on our 6 seconds study, are also higher in well-being and quality of life. And so this skill is a skill that keeps on giving. When we talk about the idea that emotional intelligence drives bottom line performance as an organization, let's just explore this idea a little further. Let's explore this idea a little further. What is performance? In high-performing organizations, people know where they are going. The vision and the strategy is clear. It is clearly articulated by the leader, and it is adopted by the team. The organization has robust systems and structures that enable the team to be able to move forward in the direction of this vision, in the direction of this goal. In high-performing organizations, the right people are on board. So not only is the bus going in a specific direction, but the right people are on the bus. And in this organization, the wrong people are let off the bus. And those who are on the bus are highly committed, they are highly engaged, and they are willing to give of their discretionary effort. They go over and above what is required of them. And lastly, in high-performing organizations, people are taking the actions required to move forward. So on a daily basis, people are moving forward. At 6 seconds, we have a model that represents this high-performance environment. And this model consists of 5 key drivers. Those drivers are trust, motivation, change, teamwork, and execution. And we know that powering this high-performance organization are the people's emotions. Did you know that 60% of team performance is driven by how the team feels? 60% of team performance is driven by how the team feels. This is a very large number. And as leaders, it is imperative that you have an understanding of the temperature, the emotional temperature in your organization, in your team. When you think about this statistic, what comes to your mind? 60%. That's a very large number. 60% of team performance is driven, is influenced, is affected by how the team feels. When you consider this statistic, what comes to your mind? I'd love to check in with you. What comes to your mind? Please share in the chat as you consider this statistic. What comes to your mind when you think about the fact that how people feel impacts the way that they show up at work? Feel free to type in the chat, or if you'd rather unmute yourself, you're welcome to do so as well. What comes to your mind? I have my eye peeled on the chat. I'm looking for your comments, your contributions. Remember, I said that this was going to be a conversation that we are having. What are your thoughts when you consider this statistic? Thank you very much, Rachel. I need to constantly check on how my team feels before engaging them in a new task. Vinita, a happy employee is the most productive. Judy, it's imperative to engage with the staff. Thank you so much for sharing, ladies. I'd love to hear from a few more. Hemlata, feeling matters in the workplace as it drives business. Julia, employee satisfaction affects production. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. Let me not lock you out. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Oh yeah, sorry, Esma Kuyana. As a leader, how you relate with your team, even, oops, it's disappeared, hold on a second. As a leader, how you relate with your team, even on their personal issues, matters as it affects their work. Yes, Elizabeth, I have the duty of ensuring that I nurture an environment that makes my team feel safe and respected. Thank you, Elizabeth. Maya, one-to-one meeting if possible adds value. Alice, I'm partly responsible for how my team feels. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Frehiwat, the positive team spirit has a high impact on performance. Penina, it's important to be empathetic of my team's feelings. Mwila, consider your feelings as well as you consider how your team feels. Regina, emotions are thus key to ensure high performance. I hope I've not missed anyone out. Thank you so much for sharing. And here's the thing, it's not really conventional wisdom. It's not really conventional wisdom that emotions matter in the workplace. Conventional wisdom is that people must leave their emotions at the door. That's conventional wisdom. And yet what we're seeing is that emotions drive behavior. So much so with the younger individuals who are working today. When you look at the millennials and those that come after them, emotions are even more important. I'm sure you've heard it said before that a person doesn't leave a company, they leave their manager, they leave their leader. The way that your team feels impacts their behavior. And this is because this is the way that the brain is wired. It is not something abnormal. When an emotion is triggered in the brain, the nervous system responds by creating feelings in the body and certain thoughts in the mind. And this is because emotions were designed to appraise and summarize an experience and inform actions. And so the way that we were created, the way the brain is wired, emotions drive behavior. And so imagining that you can separate your emotions from yourself is not possible. Emotions are an integral part of who we are. And so what's key then is to know how to navigate those emotions, is to know how to utilize that emotional insight. The US military uses the acronym VUCA to describe times like the ones we're facing: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In a VUCA environment, more than ever before, leaders need to take a different approach to leadership than in normal times. Given that we are in times of rapid change and the old rules are not producing the results that we need, leaders must shift and pivot to new leadership rules. And those new leadership rules require emotional intelligence at the core. Since emotional intelligence is all about people smarts, about relating to yourself and relating to others, it's no surprise that emotional intelligence plays such a major role in this dimension. What we know is when there is more emotional intelligence in a team, in an organization, driven by the leader themselves, practicing emotional intelligence, and spilling over to the team, then that organization has a stronger climate. Climate is the weather in the organization. Climate is what influences how engaged people are. Climate influences how motivated people are. And so we know that where there is more EQ on the part of the leader and the team, we have a stronger climate. People are more engaged, people are more committed, people are more motivated, people are willing to give of their discretionary effort. And that generates better results. And so the research supports the idea that emotional intelligence drives bottom line results. Emotional intelligence is not just a fad that will pass. Emotional intelligence is not only here to stay, but is crucial to your success as a leader. More so as we navigate these very challenging times. As I mentioned, the exciting thing about emotional intelligence is the fact that it's a learnable skill. Let's explore this idea of emotions driving behavior a little further. I want you to just take a step back and think about this idea that more EQ means a greater or a better work environment, which means better results. I'd like you to consider a time of conflict where you were in conflict with a colleague. I want you to consider a time when you were in conflict with a colleague. Before I continue, I see a comment here on the chat. I think it's let me share, because I think it's very pertinent to what we're discussing. Venita says, I am from a generation when no one cared about emotion at the workplace. And as a woman, you had to be better than everyone else. So I learned to function without emotion. Having seen the changes over the years, I have greater appreciation of the impact of managing emotions at the workplace. Thank you very much for sharing that, Vanessa. And it's so true. There has been that shift. And as a leader, it's imperative that you are able to make that transition, because the people you are leading are not those ones of yesteryear. They are those who really pride being in an environment where they can thrive. They are those who do not think twice about quitting because they are not happy. So I want us to explore this a little further. And I'd like you to consider a time when you were in conflict with a colleague. Consider a time when you were in conflict with a colleague and you showed up as your worst self. You said something, you did something that you really wish you could take back. Perhaps you got caught up in the heat of the moment and you lost sight of the bigger picture. I'd like you to go back to that moment. Close your eyes, reflect on that moment where you showed up as your worst self. I'd like you to immerse yourself in that moment fully. I'd like you to feel what you felt in that moment. And emotions come in multiples. So consider all the things that you were feeling in that moment. And I invite you to just jot down your emotions. So consider a time when you were in conflict with a colleague and you really did not handle it well. You showed up as the worst version of yourself. You said something, you did something that you really wish you could go back and take back. You got caught up in the moment, caught up in the emotions of the moment, and somehow you were not able to navigate that moment well. However uncomfortable it may make you feel, I'd like you to go back to that moment. Close your eyes and go back to that moment and reflect on that moment. Reflect on that moment. What is it that you were feeling in that moment? What is it that you were thinking in that moment? I'm going to give you a minute to please jot down your thoughts, your feelings. In whatever order they come to you, just write it down. Immerse yourself fully in that moment and experience it again. However uncomfortable it may make you feel. Emotional intelligence is about getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable and digging for the insights that we can gain from our emotions. All right, I'd like you to come back to the present moment, and I want to send you to a different moment. I want you to consider a time where, again, you were in conflict with a colleague, but this time around, you managed to show up as your best self. This time around, you dealt with a situation in a way that makes you feel proud. When you look back, you want to give yourself a pat on the back because you really handled it well. Even though your buttons were being pushed, perhaps, by this individual, even though they said something or did something that truly got your juices flowing, you were able to show up as your best self. Let's go back to that moment. Thank you to those who were sharing. Mercy says in her worst moment, she felt anger, frustrated, and belittled. Rebecca says, felt disrespected. Panina says, angry and frustrated. C. Wanayanga says, broken. Thank you for sharing. So now let's go into a better moment where you showed up as your best self. So it was a similar situation in the sense that you were in conflict, but somehow this time around, you were able to hold yourself and respond in a way that makes you feel so proud. I'd like you to go to that moment, and I'd like you to write down what you were feeling, what you were thinking in that moment. So we're comparing and contrasting a moment where you showed up as your best self and a moment where you showed up as your worst self. We are comparing and contrasting. And what I'd like you to do in both those instances is reflect. What were you thinking? What were you feeling in that moment? If I go back to the chat, thank you to those who shared. I can see more comments coming through. Zenala says, in the instance where she showed up as a worst self, she felt frustrated and unvalued. Sharon says, I'm one person who is good in surprising emotions. I think this is influenced by upbringing. The worst that happened was tears rolling down. Lillian says, enraged. Mercy has moved to her best moment and she felt in charge and could communicate better. G. Mohammed says, I felt in control of my emotions. Rebecca says, I remember telling myself, girl, you have grown. Alice, I felt I escaped a huge trap. Panina said, I felt conquered and proud of myself. Lillian says, in my best moment, I felt empowered. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the team at OSI to please share our poll with us. Segabo says, best moment, the Lord is my victor. Nompelo says, I felt so happy and was amazed. Felt so happy and was amazed at myself. So the question then is this: what made the difference? Why is it that in one moment in conflict, you showed up as your worst self, and in another moment, you showed up as your best self? Considering both these were times of conflict, what made the difference? So I'd like you to go to the poll. What made the difference? Were you the difference? Was the difference you and the way you handled? Was the other party the difference? Did you feel that the environment is what made the difference? Or can you say, actually, I have no idea? Please go to the poll and share what made the difference between when you showed up as the best version of yourself and when you showed up as the worst version of yourself. And as you do that, let me just go back to the comments that are coming through. Thank you so much for sharing. Olivia says, amen. Yes, amen to that response from Segabo. Thank you very much for that. What made the difference for you? Please share the poll. Nompelo says, I made the difference. I chose not to let the other person get to me. Nompelo, please fill in the poll. Thank you very much for sharing. I love it. Penina, I was the difference. The situation was the same, but I handled the same differently. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Please fill out the poll. Maureen, could you give me an indication?
Emotional intelligence for leaders. Wait, in the kitchen.
Yes, I was the difference. Thank you, Pamela. I chose to be different. I made the difference. I chose humility. Thank you very much. C Wanyang, sorry. Wanan, oh goodness, now why can't I say it? I read this before. Wananyanga. Charity, I made the difference. Irene, I was the difference. Maureen, how are we doing with the poll?
Yes, at 75%. Give 1 more minute.
75%. Please, if you haven't already, let me give you 1 more minute. I'd love to see what the overall thoughts are. We're at 75%. Zenala says, I took control of my emotions. I was the difference. Please share. Fill out the poll. Anna says, I was the difference. Maya, I do not let the situation have control on me. Thank you, Maya. Okay, Maureen, I think we can close the poll and share it. Let's have a look at what the general consensus is. What made the difference between worst self and best self? Susan says, I was the difference. I remained humble. So Maureen, if you can share the poll with us, let's see what the general consensus is. What made the difference? All righty. So we have 84% of those who polled said that I was the difference. And I can see that in the comments that were shared in the chat. 4% said that the other person was the difference. 11% says the environment was the difference. And 2% says, I have no idea. I want us to explore this a little further. Remember, we're talking about emotional intelligence for leadership success. We're talking about the idea that being more emotionally intelligent impacts your ability to lead. And what is emotional intelligence? Being more aware of what your emotions are, understanding them, being more intentional, choosing to respond rather than react, and being more purposeful, aligning your choices with your overall purpose, your reason why. I'd like us to go into a group discussion, and you're going to go into breakout sessions. You'll be in the breakout session for about 15 minutes in groups of 5 to 6. And what I'd like you to do in the breakout is I'd like you to discuss this idea of what made the difference. So in your breakout, 15 minutes, 5 people means roughly each person has about 3 minutes to share their experience. You do not have to go into major details about the 2 scenarios, but really it's to just explore this idea of what made the difference. If you feel you made the difference, why do you think you made the difference? And I know some of you already shared this on the chat. So you will be going into breakouts. You have 15 minutes for this conversation. Please ensure that everyone has an opportunity to share. Please ensure that everyone has an opportunity to share as you go into the breakout. What made the difference between your best self and your worst self? What made the difference? Please join the breakout sessions. I can see we still have a number of you here. Please join your breakout. The breakout rooms are open. Please join and have that conversation. Like I said, you don't have to go into a lot of detail about the scenario itself. The idea is the learning. The idea is the learning. Don't have to go into the scenario itself. The idea is the learning that you gained from this situation. What made the difference? We still have about 30 people who are here. If you need help, please let us know. You should have received the invitation to join the breakout. Please join the breakout room and have this discussion. What made the difference? Why is it that on one hand you showed up as the best version of yourself, and on the other hand you showed up as the worst version of yourself? Please join the breakout room so that you can join the conversation. Each person can share their reflection, their insights. If you're having issues, please let us know so we can support you. Maureen Zenala is asking that you share the breakout again. Still have a large number who are here. Please let me know if you are having a challenge. I have a large number who are still here. Let me know if you're having a challenge. Let us know if you're having a challenge so we can send you to your breakout. Please just accept the invitation to join the breakout. Accept the invitation to join the breakout. All right, still have over 20 people who are here. You need to accept the invitation so that you can go to the breakout. So there is a pop-up that would have appeared on your screen. There is a pop-up on your screen. Please, can you join the breakout room that has been allocated to you? And if you have any issues, please join your breakouts. We still have a few people who are here. Kindly join your breakout. We still have quite a number. If you're having issues, please do let us know so we can support you. Janala, my internet is messed up. My apologies, Kayula. Sorry about that. One of the challenges with technology. Janalia, are you still here or have you been able to join your room? I think Janalia was in room 13. Please join the breakout rooms. For those who have just joined us, if you've just joined us, we are in a breakout session. Maureen, no one in breakout room number 12. It's because the people haven't joined. So I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if some people are on the call, but not really on the call. I guess some are also having challenges with connectivity. And so that's causing them not to be in the room. Okay, at least they've got people in room 12 now. Is there anyone who's here who's not been able to join? Ngoma, did you not see the invitation? Let me see. Ngoma, you are meant to be in. Give me a second. Let me have a look. Ngoma. Okay. Ngoma, I'm sending you an invitation again. Hopefully you can receive it this time round. We still have a number who are here in this room who have not joined the breakouts. We are in a breakout activity. We are in a breakout activity. Please do join your breakout room. For those who are here with me right now, please let me know if you are having a challenge joining a breakout so that we can support you. I see a number who are still here. If you can hear me, you can type in the chat or you can unmute yourself. How can we support you so that you can join your breakout? I still have quite a number who are here. Who do I see? Fenice, I see you here. Do you need some help going to a breakout? Juliet, can you hear me? Juliet, can you hear me? Reham, can you hear me? Reham? Diana, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
We are in breakouts. Let me send you to a breakout room. We're having a discussion in breakouts. I've sent you an invitation to join a breakout room. Diana, have you seen the invitation? All right, Diana is gone. Sekai? Oh, Sekai, I don't think has joined yet. I don't think Sekai can hear me. If there is anyone who can hear me, if you can hear the sound of my voice, we are in breakout rooms. You should be in a breakout at this moment. We're having a conversation in the breakout rooms. Do let myself or Maureen know if you need assistance so that we can send you to the breakout room. So if you can hear me.
Hi, Mucha.
Hi.
Okay, so I was in breakout room 7 and there didn't seem to be anything happening. I think I kind of missed the guideline. So what's supposed to happen? Is it our own discussion in there? Any one of us can lead it? I kind of missed the part. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea is you're having a conversation about the difference between showing up as your best self and showing up as your worst self. Were you here when we did that activity?
Yes, I was, but I just missed the instruction on what happens in the breakout room because the room I ended up in was dead quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry
Okay, it's
about that.
fine.
So the idea is, yes, to have a conversation, and perhaps you can lead the conversation then if no one else was speaking about, yeah, what is the difference? I mean, what caused the difference?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay. I don't know where do I go to find my room again?
We can move you. Which group are you in?
I was in room 7.
Room 7. Your name is?
Mwila.
Okay. Let me just move it.
Thank you.
Maureen, how much more time do we have?
Let's give them 5 more minutes. I can hear from some groups who are still discussing.
Maureen, how much time do we have left?
Can you hear me? Sorry, we can give them 5 more minutes.
Okay.
From some groups, I can hear people are still discussing.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's good. If you are still in this main room and you need assistance, please let us know. If you are still in this main room and you need assistance, let us know. We still have quite a large number of people who are here. We are actually in breakouts, although it looks like some have come back. Because I see Penina says they had a great conversation. So for those of you who had your conversation and you finished it, there are some who joined a bit late, so we've just given some extra time. So just bear with us as we give them the extra time. Yeah, so I see that some rooms, people have come out of their room. If you're done with your conversation, or that is in order, let's just give a few more minutes to those who are still discussing. Nelisha and Paula, you are showing up as unassigned. Did you participate in a breakout discussion? Nelisha and Paula?
Hi, sorry, I didn't. I've just joined.
Okay. All right. Let me send you to a room that still is in discussion. You can just join them and catch up with them.
Awesome. Thank you.
That they are having. So I'm sending you to a room right now. You're welcome, Nelisha. Paula?
Hi, I just joined as well.
All right, Paula. So I'm sending you, let me send you to the same room as Nelisha so that you can learn what we're doing. I think there's about 3 minutes left. And then El Banda. Yeah, so 3 more minutes until that session is wrapped up. El Banda, I don't know if you're here, if you can hear me. All right, Maureen, I think is our time up?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Time up.
All right, welcome back to all those who are back from the breakouts. Welcome back to those who are back. Karibu to, as we say in Kenya, to those who are joining us now for the first time, you're welcome. We are just coming back from a breakout conversation, so we'll just give everyone a little bit of time to join back now that the conversation is over. So the breakout, the breakout rooms will close in the next minute. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your support, Maureen.
Welcome.
All righty, I think that we are all back. Welcome back from your breakouts. I can see from the chat that Penina says they had a great conversation. Penina, are you able to just share a little about what you discussed in your group? We're talking about the difference between your worst self and your best self. Penina, are you able to unmute and share a little about the insights that you gained as a group? Or anyone who was in Penina's group, if Penina is not able to share. I'd like us to get some insights from the different groups. Feel free, you can share on the chat or you can unmute yourself. Any additional insights? I know that before we went into the breakouts, a number of you had already started sharing about the difference, the fact that you made the difference. I'd love to hear from a few. Who would like to share?
Hello, my name is Mercy from Zambia.
Hi, Mercy. Please go ahead.
Okay, let me just share the feedback that I collected from my breakout. In the worst moments, there are feelings of anger, frustration, feeling belittled. A team member saw that as an opportunity to sort of stand up for themselves and, say and put something right. So she also displayed anger, and in that instance, it was difficult for her to communicate. Another team member found it a very provocative, and all her emotions were all out, and she wanted to prove a point as well. In the best moment, team members felt in charge. They could control themselves. Maturity and time came into play, and it was an opportunity to make the other person see what they did not see, what they could have missed, and it ended up in having fruitful conversations. In the other instance, the team member handled it better and was able to communicate to the other person and even got an apology out of the other person who was very provocative. We also went into just giving each other tips on how to manage these instances better, and also how we can communicate and engage our team members so that they can benefit from that level of emotional intelligence. So some of the tips that came through were that you need to take time off away from the situation. When you are confronted, it's a provocative conversation you're having with a team member. You take a few steps back, think it through, and then respond. A team member gave an example of emails that fly around sometimes from a senior member of staff, or sometimes from a junior member of staff, which if you replied in that instance, you'd have many regrets afterwards. So she gave us a tip that maybe if it's not too urgent, take 30 minutes away to reflect and then respond. You notice the difference that if you responded there and then, without realizing your tone, the voice, the tone you'd use in that email would maybe infiltrate the other person. But if you had taken some time off, it would actually be more mature and beneficial to both parties that are communicating. Wow. So in a nutshell, that is what we picked up.
Fantastic. That sounds like a very rich conversation. And what's great about adult learning is we don't just learn from the facilitator, but we learn from each other. So thank you very much to that group. Yes, Hajat, I would like each of the groups to share. If I can ask you, please, let's just take a minute or two to share your key takeaways, your key reflections so that everyone can have an opportunity. Pamela, I see your hand is up. So would you like to go next? And then I can see Susan is also ready. So Pamela and then Susan after that.
Hello. I just want to share a few tips that we focused on. We really focused on, Pamela from Zambia, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
We really focused on what made the difference for us to turn from the west south to the best south. And some of the things that came out was to withdraw from the emotional event, and also to gather our own emotion and manage people differently. And the other thing was also to be very understanding, empathize with our team, feel ourselves in their shoes and be able to manage them from that perspective. And also the other thing that really came out the most was knowing how to manage people. I think people management is very important. And also self-management, because we need to manage our own emotions as well. Only when we manage our emotions, that's when we can manage other people. And the most important thing that really struck me was making a choice. I think as a leader, we can make a choice to be different. Only when we make a choice to be different can we see the difference and the environment changes for the better. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Susan, I think you were next. Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, guys. Mine is very brief, and I think I was somehow touched because personally, it's like I've even had some difficulties on how to do with it, but I think through sharing, I found the answer. Like when things are getting hotter, you can withdraw, come back, and use the writings. I think I've learned something there. You don't do verbal communications, yeah, but you do go back, do some writings, and then be communicating through the writings. I think that one is really cooling the emotions. And then last but not least, I also realized that one just needs to have a small meeting with her or himself, herself, and then it's like you decide. I'm not ready for this one. If any case, because we were asking ourselves that your colleague, it's a colleague that is really wants to provoke you. How do you go about it? They said, just calm down, realize that there is something that brought you there that you have to achieve. Look at your goal, get focused onto your goal, calm down, and work on your emotions. If you can go somewhere, get out, and then give yourself time. You come back, things will be cool. I think that was nice.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think some really awesome insights that are being shared here. Hajat, did you want to represent your group? Or I don't know if your group has already spoken. Hajat? And then I see after Hajat, we have Janala as well. Yes, go ahead. Hajat.
Actually, I'm not going to speak, but as in group number 10, and we have a leader in Vinita, she's going to speak for us.
Awesome.
Madam Vinita, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Vinita, would you like to go ahead? And then we'll go to Janala after that.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, I seem to have become a de facto leader because I talk too much. But anyway, we actually got a bit carried away in our discussion and we strayed completely away from the topic and went into the expectation of emotional intelligence for women at the workplace. And what came out in that is that when we are dealing with our colleagues in the workplace, there is an expectation that we will have a better emotional intelligence. And so if a fellow women employee comes to us as leaders asking for anything, she has an expectation that will be more understanding than if she goes to a male leader, which is good to some extent, but it can become detrimental to her as well as to us. So finding that balance of emotional intelligence and separating it from how we would have handled the same situation if we didn't have the feminine influences within us, that makes our life a bit more difficult, and we have to train ourselves to become even smarter on that part of our job. So we have to continue to be the mentor, but at the same time be able to distinguish between what we are being requested for, irrespective of the gender of the colleague who's coming to us. We have to be able to take a balanced view. So that is what came out of our discussion, that we have a slightly more difficult role because the expectations of emotional intelligence from us is higher.
Thank you.
That's what we ended up discussing rather than best case and worst case and all that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure your discussions were very rich. Yes, we have Janala. Please go ahead. Janala, can you hear me?
Thank you, ladies. So from our group number 13, we had 4 members. From the experience that, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Janala, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Janala, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm from group number 13, where we had 4 ladies. And from the interactions in that group, reflecting on the worst reaction, we learned that because of frustration, we end up doing extreme things sometimes. Like one of the members mentioned, they burst out, it was emotional, it was bad, they felt belittled, and they sensed a lot of injustice because they felt they were being treated in a certain way because of them being female and because it was them. So they lost control of the whole situation. So in the worst moment, the major issue is that we tend to lose control of our emotions, and sometimes it just doesn't end anywhere. You end up hurting yourself even more, and it's just bad. But in the best situation, where the situation was good, there were 2 main issues that we learned from each other. The same person who had reacted in a bad way or in an emotional way had now become more mature, and they were able to express themselves without bursting out, and they had matured in the level of their managing of the emotions. And for others within the group, they had control of the emotions, and other than, instead of reacting in the moment, they'll take time away and then reflect and then address the matter later. So those were the main issues that we learned from group 13. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Is there any group I've left out that would like to share? Is there anything you'd like to add to what already has been discussed? Please feel free at this time to share. I'm not seeing any hands that are up. I can see some comments on the chat. So let me have a look at those. Charity says she can't hear, she has no sound. Maureen, please just do me a favor and type, oh yeah, you've already done that. Thank you, Maureen. How does writing down issues cool emotions? This came from another group. So there's a question here from Claudia. She says there's a group who've said that writing down issues can cool your emotions. How does that work? Is a question there. Oh, and Susan has answers. In writing, you create the distance between you and your colleagues, thus avoid the escalation of emotions. Thank you very much, Susan, for responding. Is there anyone else? I do not want to lock you out. If you have any reflections you'd like to share as a result of the conversation you had in your group. Yes, please go ahead. Was there anyone else you wanted to share? Chipo?
So I'm sharing from group 8.
Yes, Chipo.
And 4 key points that came out from the group. The first one was that stepping back from an adverse situation is critical if one does not want to react adversely when you're having a situation like that. So that's number one. Then there was an issue of faith that sometimes you need to realize that if you are, well, I guess faith, religion, or if you believe in God, that certain situations are there to teach us something. So instead of reacting to that situation, the first thing to do is to say, what is this situation? Why is this situation happening? What is it that I am meant to learn from this situation? And then we also discussed the issue of culture, and the group talked about how culture and upbringing can have an impact on how we react. So sometimes when we are brought up in households where, for instance, parents were very quick to anger, it is something that we learn as children, and we learn and we grow up with that kind of attitude that it is okay to react like that when we are faced with adverse situations. And when we become leaders in corporate, in our companies, then we actually tend to behave like that, but that we can actually learn the reverse if we make to learn how to control our emotions and to learn how to step back when we are faced with adverse situations. We also discussed about what is it that makes leaders successful, and the group talked about realizing that a leader will not succeed if they have no control over their emotions. Because once we aggrieve our staff members, then our staff members are not able to give us the best of themselves because we are not treating them in the best possible light. And then the last thing was, leaders also need to analyze what motivates their staff members. And if they're able to meet their staff members halfway in terms of what motivates their staff members, those staff members are able to give them the best of themselves. So those are some of the points that we discussed in group 8.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think you had a very rich discussion in your group. I can see some comments on the chat, and then Hajat, I'll give you an opportunity. Ms. Hajat, I'll give you an opportunity to speak. I can see your hand is up. So Ilona says, not every situation requires a reaction, and that is what came from the group. And then Ngoma, being more understanding of the fact that everyone is going through a lot can help you not to burst out in an emotional conversation, and you can judge the situation or act or respond in a better way. So thank you very much for that. Madam Hajat, I can see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mucha. Thank you very much. I want to add to the writing bits. It has been responded to by the group that brought it, but I thought I need to respond to that. given my experience. I think writing may be a double-edged sword, writing. In a situation where you have these verbal conversations and then you withdraw and go to write, I think it may be a double-edged sword, putting a permanent record. I don't think it is the best. It may not be the best in responding to a verbal conversation in writing. I think you may either worsen the situation, depending on what situation it is. So probably writing would take about 5% of the time, but 90% of the time, if you have to respond, please do so after you have withdrawn, as members have suggested, composed yourself, and thought about what it is that you want to tackle, or how you want to respond to whatever situation it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Hajat. Susan, I think this is a follow-up on the issue of writing. Please go ahead.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you so much for this chance. I would still insist on writing because it worked for me. As much as it came from my colleague from the group here, but I also confirmed that it had worked for me sometimes back, because I realized I wanted things to be done like yesterday, you know, and I'm waiting that thing to be done immediately, and I want it to be done. So it's like, now this guy is also doing other things. What can we do? And then somebody just suggested, I think a more senior guy in the office, just write, Susan, why can't you just write and leave for her and just give her time, so that you see, you come back, you find out maybe if she's not done it or she's done it. And for sure, when I gave her time, I wrote it down and I gave her time. Coming back, I found her that she's done with it. And things went on so well. So when another colleague from this group kind of shared that, I confirmed it and I said, it works. Yes, it works. My emotions went down because I was boiling. I wanted that thing to be done. And it's like, now when I wrote it down, it's like the other guy took it and she worked on it and things went on well. And I say, thank you. And she appreciated. So I think writing sometimes could work. Yes, it cooled me down.
Yes. And I think basically, what we're all saying is that you need to apply emotional intelligence to understand what is the most appropriate course of action for that moment. So sometimes it's writing. Sometimes in writing what you're thinking, you are able to process it yourself. And then other times you need to have that conversation. So seeing a few more, Rebecca says it's similar to journaling. When you write it down, it allows you to let it out. And then we have another comment from Sekabo. In writing, your communication can be misconstrued in the backdrop of high emotions. Irene says writing works when you feel the person is overly rude. It enhances accountability, but there are times where you may need to discuss. So I think that what we can conclude is that we must then apply emotional intelligence to know when is it appropriate to write something. And I think anytime that you are writing, you must still apply all those principles that people talked about, where you maybe take a pause and reflect in writing. Thank you so much for everyone who has shared your contributions. They have been so invaluable, even for myself. I think there's a lot that we can learn. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that I am part of a global organization called 6 Seconds. And 6 Seconds developed a model that helps us to actually put emotional intelligence into practice, helps us to move from showing up as your worst self to showing up as your best self more often than not. And this model gives a framework, and I'd like to share this framework with you. The model has 3 parts to it: know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself. Know yourself is really being able to tune into what it is you are feeling.
in that moment, what are you feeling? And it's reminding you that those emotions are actually valuable insight. There are no good or bad emotions. Anger is not a bad thing. Anger is letting you know that there is something in your way. There's something that is blocking your progress. So the idea is to really be clear about what you're feeling, admitting it to yourself so that you can then use that emotional insight. Choose yourself is then moving from what you're feeling to asking yourself, what options do I have? Now that I know I am angry as a result of what someone has said, as a result of this email I've received, as a result of what someone has done. Now that I know I'm angry, what options do I have? And then give yourself is about asking yourself, what do you truly want? As a leader, you really must be very clear about your why. What is your ultimate objective? Because in the heat of the moment, it may feel good to let it all loose and blast that individual. But will that give you what you ultimately want? And so this model of emotional intelligence helps us to practice. When you spin this wheel, you're constantly asking yourself, what am I feeling? What options do I have? What do I truly want? And this helps you to practice emotional intelligence. Remember, earlier I said emotional intelligence is being more aware, being more intentional, and being more purposeful. And so as you spin this wheel, you get better at spinning the wheel. And you're better at making choices that are emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is just being more aware, tuning into what you're feeling, being more intentional, choosing to respond rather than react, and being more purposeful, aligning your choices. As we come to a close of the session, because I do want to leave time for those who may have any questions, I'd like to share with you some tips that can help you to utilize emotional intelligence as a strategic resource as a leader. So I'd like to share with you 5 tips. And I mentioned that I'll also share the handout with the tips when I share my slides. So the first tip I want to share with you, we're talking about this idea that as a leader, oh, okay, sorry, my apologies. I've just realized that my slides, I was not sharing my slides. So let me just go back quickly and share the 6 seconds model. I realized that the slides were not visible. So this is the 6 seconds model, as I said. Know yourself, choose yourself, give yourself. Know yourself is self-awareness. What am I feeling? Being more aware. Choose yourself is self-management. Asking yourself what options you have, being intentional and choosing to respond rather than react. And then give yourself is being more purposeful. Asking yourself, what do I truly want? What is the overall objective I'm trying to achieve? What is my why? And so as we close, I'd like to share 5 tips how you can leverage the power of emotional intelligence to drive greater performance within your team. The first is that as a leader, you must earn trust. The old style of leadership is a process of controlling. Do as I say. But leading today requires you to be a role model. Every day you are earning or losing trust. And trust is the currency of emotional capital. With trust, people are willing to take the risk to change, to work together, to dig deeper, and to go further. And so as a leader, you need to ensure that you are earning trust. The second tip I would give you is to ignite motivation. Again, the old leadership style is this paradigm that says that people will work if they receive something in return. And yes, it's true, people come to work so that they can receive something in return. But there is something greater. External motivation is not a sufficient motivator. Leaders must find ways to ignite intrinsic motivation, what comes from the inside. And you do that by connecting with your team and providing meaning, opportunities for mastery, and granting them autonomy. The third tip is to enhance teamwork. Enhance teamwork. The old model of leadership rewards star performers regardless of how they achieve the results. But successful leaders today understand that performance doesn't come from individuals. Performance is driven by the ability of the team to work together to solve problems and create synergies. And so as a leader, you need to leverage emotional intelligence to drive teamwork, to connect with all the members of the team and encourage all the members of the team to show up and give of their best, and to create and cultivate an environment where team members can thrive. The third is that as a leader, you must inspire change. The old model of leadership has changed as a process that's built around systems and structures. Leaders who really want to be effective understand that, you must leverage people insight to inspire change. People will change when you tap into not just their mind, but their heart as well. Change requires head and heart. Change requires you to ensure that your team has the skills necessary, but also the attitude that is necessary to navigate this environment we find ourselves in of continuous change. And then the last is, as a leader, you must drive execution. And driving execution is not a process of rigidity, defining a standard operating procedure and following it religiously, following it rigorously. Successful leaders understand that they must set clear strategic direction, keep people focused on the vision and the goal, but then allow the team to get on with the business of doing the work whilst holding them accountable. And so emotional intelligence helps leaders to drive performance by earning trust, igniting motivation, enhancing teamwork, inspiring change, and driving execution. I mentioned before, as we got started, that emotional intelligence really isn't just another skill, just something nice to have. As a matter of fact, I always say that emotional intelligence isn't another skill that you need to add to the plate as a leader. Rather, emotional intelligence is the plate upon which all your leadership capabilities lie. Do you want to get better at managing conflict? Get better at emotional intelligence. Do you want to communicate more effectively? Get better at emotional intelligence. Do you want to ignite motivation and engagement, getting your team to give of their discretionary effort? What is required? Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a game-changing skill for leaders. And earlier in one of the group discussions, as we heard, there was a conversation about how women leaders are greater expectations lie on them. And yes, that's true. And I'm not sure that that's going to change anytime soon. But let me close by saying this. Emotional intelligence is not being soft. Emotional intelligence is not being a walkover. Emotional intelligence is being more aware, which takes effort, which takes work. It's being more intentional, which is a lot harder to do than just reacting to the things that happen around you. And it's being more purposeful, aligning the choices you make on a daily basis to your overall objective. That's work. It's much harder to practice emotional intelligence. It's not being soft. Emotional intelligence is understanding that you have the power to choose how you respond to that which is in front of you. It doesn't mean that you allow people to walk all over you. If you need to come down hard on your team, emotional intelligence comes down hard, but it's how you do it. that makes the difference. It's how you do it that will impact whether or not your people feel that they're in an environment where they can thrive. Remember, 60% of performance is driven by how people feel. Thank you so much for participating in today's session. It has been my honor to facilitate this conversation. At this time, I'd like to just open it out if there's anyone who has any questions that they would like to ask. Feel free to share if you have your questions. You can either unmute yourself or you can share in the chat. As I ask for questions, if you do want to reach out, my email address is on the slide and you can follow me on social media. I am very active on LinkedIn and my handle is just my name, Mucha Mlingo. For those of you who use other social media platforms, you will find me on that same handle as well. I don't see any hands up. I don't see any questions in the comments.
Just
yes.
Grateful.
Go ahead, Susan.
No, we're just grateful. Thank you so much. It was a nice time. We're so rich, you know. And thank you for your time. I think things have changed and we're going to pick it. Our production is going to increase. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Susan. Rebecca is asking a question. Thank you very much to all those who are sharing your appreciation. I appreciate it as well. I appreciate you. So I have a question here from Rebecca. How can you measure team members' morale to be able to establish how they feel? So how can you measure team members' morale to be able to establish the way that they feel? Yes. Yes?
Amucha, a question for me.
Okay, Chipo, just hold on a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I will take your question. Let me just answer the one from, am I still sharing? Just hold on 1 second, guys, sorry. Okay, yeah. So let me just answer and then I'll come to you, Chipo, sorry. So there was a question here from Rebecca. How can you measure team members' morale to be able to establish the way they feel? There's a number of ways that you can do that, all right? A number of ways you can do that. I think one of the ways that you can is to use assessments. So there are many organizations, ourselves included, that actually deploy assessments that help you to measure engagement, to measure where the team is. So if you're looking for something that is data-driven, then there are assessments that can do that for you. So as an organization, for example, we have a tool that we use that we call our EQ audit, and the EQ audit measures what the employee engagement is, and it measures how the team is doing over our 5 key drivers of performance, which I mentioned earlier. So those 5 key drivers are trust, change, execution, motivation, and teamwork. You can, however, just do it by observation. So really just observing the actions and the behavior of the team. Unfortunately, many managers don't find the time for this. And one of the disadvantages, I guess, of using observation as a yardstick is that, it's sometimes hard to pick up on what the team is feeling. So a manager who is looking to observe the team needs to be an individual who really is keen on identifying emotional intelligence cues. You can actually run a quick survey within the organization. So you could just use any of the online tools or any tools you have internally as a company where you deploy a survey, a questionnaire, for example, and the questions, asked would be questions that really speak to how the individuals are feeling. One of the challenges with a survey like this is sometimes the team may feel that they're not able to share freely. So especially where the environment has not been conducive and people feel that they can't be free, then it may be difficult to get data that way. But you can definitely do that. So I think those are the 3 things I would say in terms of how to measure. Thank you very much. Chipo, would you like to go ahead with your question? And then Madam Majat, I also see you have a question there. Chipo? It was Chipo, right? Or was it not Chipo who had yes, go ahead.
So Mucha?
Yes.
Sometimes the shoe is on the other foot. You are, say, a subordinate to, say, a CEO or a board chairperson who has lost their cool.
Right.
How do you use the emotional intelligence principles to deal with that?
Yeah. I think that, the first thing we must understand is that, the only person that you have control over is yourself, right? So I think that's the first thing, is to understand that you can only control yourself. Where you have a leader who either in the moment has lost their cool, or those difficult bosses that you are working with, and this is not necessarily a once in a while, but this is someone who regularly.
That was the worst decision I made, I'm telling you.
Where this is someone who regularly behaves this way, then there are a number of steps. I think the first step is that you must not take it personally. In the moment, especially when we're dealing with difficult leaders, as you said, Chipo, maybe it's a board chair, it's someone who is senior to you. We have a tendency to really internalize the way they are behaving. So I think the first step is you need to shift the issue and understand that the issue is that individual, not necessarily you. So I think the first thing is to just to take that step and really understand that you're, at least in principle, you're not the issue, right? The problem lies with that individual. That said, it's also important to understand that the feelings that we have towards others will have a tendency to drive us to behave in a certain way, but we have a choice over how to behave. We always have a choice. So when someone is, engaging with you in a way that you don't like, speaking to you in a way that you don't like, it brings up certain emotions, but you can be the bigger person. You can choose to react, to respond differently. That being said, it does not mean that you should then be a doormat and allow someone else to walk all over you. I think it's very important as an individual to, as much as is possible, as much as is in your power, to set clear boundaries. Now, in the moment, it may not be possible to do so, especially if we're talking about someone who is someone that you report to. But you might find that at a later time, you are actually able to address the issue and bring it up and indicate why you felt that the behavior was not appropriate. Be very clear that when you are giving feedback to someone, that it's not about how, that you focus more on the impact of the behavior. Especially when you're dealing with someone who's your leader, focus on the impact of the behavior rather than focusing on your feelings. So Chipo, I hope that helps. I think the first thing I said was number one, remind yourself that it's not personal. As much as it may feel like it is a personal attack, the issue is the person. The person is, the issue is with that particular person, right? Remind yourself that there is a problem that needs to be addressed, all right? And don't make it about the actual person, right? So shift taking it personally. I hope that's clear. Then the second thing I said was you can manage how you're feeling. Regardless of how pushed you are to react, you can manage how you're feeling. And then the third thing is that, it doesn't mean you must be a walkover. In the moment, you may not be able to deal with or respond to the way they've behaved, but there's no reason why you can't find an opportune moment at a later date to share and set those boundaries. I hope I've answered that question adequately. Thank you very much. I'm seeing hands that are up. Madam Hajat, would you like to Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mucha. I have very brief ones. Number one is that your statement, if you can just expound very, very briefly on this statement that you made, that in leadership, EQ eats IQ for breakfast. So it's a good statement, but just expound for the benefits of us all here. Then number two, you did say emotional intelligence can be learned. I'm just wondering, what is the best way to learn it? For those who may not have opportunity to listen to such presentations, what is the best way for people to learn emotional intelligence so that we can, share with our teams? And then the last one is to the organizers. I don't know if there will be a photo screenshot opportunity where we put on our videos so that we can keep a record of this excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. All right, so let me quickly respond. I'm mindful that we don't have much time. So the first one, EQ eats IQ for breakfast. So what we're saying here is that as a leader, your competence is a given, because you would not be a leader if you were not competent. So as a leader, there is a certain level of competence that is expected of you, but that alone will not drive success. Your technical know-how is not enough to drive success in the organization. As a leader, because you are really, as your role is to bring out the best in others, your role is to deliver through others, then you're going to need more than your technical know-how. So that's what that statement means, that your technical know-how got you to that position of leadership, but it will not enable you to drive sustainable success. You need more than that. You need to be able to connect with your people. You need to be able to drive your people, to drive engagement, and that requires emotional intelligence. The second question you ask is, how can we practice? Because emotional intelligence is a skill. I think number one, and Irene has said this, books, there are so many books that are out there that can help to learn greater emotional intelligence. And one of the things that has happened as a result of COVID is there is so much available online. There are so many online courses that are available. Some of them are free. So there is so much that someone can do just going online and seeking for programs. So if you wanted to share, for example, with your team, you could just go online, identify some free online programs, and invite your team to attend. So I think that's what I would say to that. I hope, Madam Ajat, I've answered your question. Penina? Penina, I see your hand is up.
Hello?
Yes, Penina, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Penina, we can hear you.
Sorry, thank you. I think basically I have two questions, and one I can see has a lot of similarity with what Pamela is also asking in regards to our fellow men leaders, and also basically, of course, subordinates, where we come across a lot of opposition from the guys. So one is to ask, how do we deal with that in terms of, our fellow leaders? And number two, when you're driving performance with your team and they peg their performance with their pay. Say, for instance, we've already discussed, we've tried as a team working towards a certain goal, but at some point they also want to peg it on maybe their pay increment as opposed to maybe other areas at the workplace. So how can you handle such?
Okay, I want to be sure I've understood the question. So the first question was, How do you deal with the opposition from male counterparts or leaders? I think that the answer to that is, I think emotional intelligence helps us to deal with that opposition. It helps us because we then become less reactive and more intentional. And I think for me, the greatest lesson I've learned in my emotional intelligence journey is to really ask myself, what is it that I really want? What do I want to achieve? And so in all those instances where you're dealing with, you're dealing with people who are treating you in a way that you don't like, or dealing with people who are not respecting you as they should. The question is to ask yourself, what do I really want? And if it is necessary for you to speak up and call them out, then speak up and call them out. But there's a very big difference between speaking out and calling a peer out when you do it in a very measured way, when you are clear about the evidence of what the issues are, when you can clearly outline the impact of those things that individual is doing, to when you just start shouting or calling them out. The reality is that, yes, women are often labeled as being emotional, being overly emotional. And what that does is sometimes it causes us to feel, oh, I can't speak because if I speak, I'll be seen as aggressive or overly emotional. No. Gather your thoughts and put together your response to the situation in hand. So the answer I would give, and we don't have a lot of time, hopefully I'll be invited for another session so we can expound on this further. But the answer I would give is, where you are dealing with opposition, ask yourself at each interaction, what is my objective? Always have your long game in mind. What is it that I want to achieve? And then make a decision based on that. And that's what emotional intelligence helps us to do. It helps us to take a breath, pause and count to 10, and then ask yourself, what do I really want? And I want to emphasize again, emotional intelligence is not being soft. It's not being a walkover. Emotional intelligence is being able to adequately explain yourself, adequately deal with those who have crossed boundaries, adequately deal with those who are behaving inappropriately, but doing it in a measured way. The second was, I'm not sure I understood your second question, Penina. You talked about dealing with people who want to peg their performance on their pay. So are you saying someone who is asking for a pay rise?
Yes, basically, yes.
I think, again, the idea is to give feedback and outline the reasons why you are able to do what you are able to do, right? So if you only are able to provide a certain amount of increment, then I think transparency is key. Just let people know that this is what you are able to do. However, there are these other incentives or benefits that you can draw their attention to. But I think the reality is, if you're not able to give what someone needs or someone is asking for, you just need to be very frank. I think for me, the key as a leader is not to pretend that you can, not to avoid the conversation, but to just be very transparent about what you are able to deliver. I have another question. I see we are over time. Maybe I can just take this one last question. I think there's one about opposition as a leader, first from men and then subordinates. I hope I've tackled that a little. And then, yes, there's a question. There was a question I saw. Yeah. So what do you do if the organization itself does certain things that affect the morale of your team and you have no control over it? The top leader keeps demotivating the team by their actions. I think my answer to that would be finding a way to really speak to the situation. I think a lot of times we kind of avoid dealing with tough situations, but emotional intelligence is about being able to have those tough conversations, but having them in a way that is measured, having them in a way that is respectful. So where a leader is the one that is really impacting the morale of the team, what I would do is I would gather evidence and I would speak to the impact of what you're seeing. So again, when you're giving someone feedback, it's not so much about you do this and you do that, and it's more about highlighting the impact that you are seeing, right, of that behavior. So I hope I've answered those questions. I apologize. It's like there's a lot to speak to as far as emotional intelligence is concerned, and I trust that I will be invited again to such a forum. Thank you very much for your time. I have shared my contact information, so if you feel you want to follow up your question, I'm more than happy for you to shoot me an email and I will do the necessary. Thank you very much. Rose, over back to you.
Thank you, Mucha. I think the issue of emotional intelligence is not something that we can exhaust in 2 hours, and I'm hoping that I will have another session probably before the year ends. So what we can do is I'm requesting that we all switch on our videos, if you don't mind, so that we can take a screenshot, try and smile. And then my colleagues will take a yes. So Chipo, you let us know, Chipo and Maureen, please let us know when we should smile and whether you're ready for the screenshot.
And I think there will have to be multiple, right? Because there are many pages.
Yes, so we still have a few people who've not put on their videos on, if you don't mind. Chipo, Maureen, please go ahead.
Okay, everyone, please smile.
Chipo, is that all? I think Chipo is. Yeah, Maureen, you can take. Chipo, did you take it?
Yes, I did. I'm on page 3.
So we keep on smiling.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mucha, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've given us clarity in regards to emotional intelligence and just the fact that we need to be aware of the feelings that we have. I think we are, personally, I think I'm overwhelmed with what I've just learned today, and it was an eye-opener for me that the team performance actually is a reflection of what the team is feeling. So I think for the leaders, so at this point, I would like to say a big thank you to all the members who've been able to join us. We appreciate you for taking off your time, about 2 hours, and joining us from various locations from the world. And we hope that we'll be meeting later on. I just want to make an announcement that we'll be having our conference next month from the 22nd to the 25th in Mombasa. Please join us. We'll be sending out the invites very soon. So thank you very much. Have a blessed afternoon and bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.